afternoon to all of you that are joining us for our Fort Jackson Town Hall focused on COVID-19. Beagle, the commanding general here at Fort Jackson in the Army Training Center. And when I say I want to thank all of you for joining us, when I say all, that means Team Jackson. And what I include in Team Jackson is all of you out there, our extended families, our local community, and all of our families and workforce here at Fort Jackson. This afternoon, I've got a panel that most of you are familiar with, but I've got a new addition to the panel for today, and I'm going to go around and reintroduce Colonel Chad Koenig. To my right, your left, is our medical activity commander at Moncrief Army Health Clinic. To his left is Colonel Wes Hankins, our garrison commander here at Fort Jackson. And then to my left, your right, is Colonel Eric Flesh. The last couple of town halls, I've had Colonel J.C. White, who commands the 193rd Infantry Brigade, but today bringing in his counterpart, Colonel Eric Flesh, who commands the 165th Infantry Basic Combat Training Brigade. And just so you know, Fort Jackson has the two largest basic combat training brigades in the Army, and Colonel Flesh commands one of the two brigades that we have here. I want to start by saying that there's a lot of fear, a lot of anxiety, and a lot of stress that's out there today, not only here at Fort Jackson, but across our country as we watch the cases of COVID-19 grow day to day, as well as, and unfortunately, a lot of the deaths increase due to COVID-19. But Fort Jackson, we want to do our part, and an approach to reducing some of that fear, some of that anxiety, and some of that stress is by informing. And that's where we really want to do our part, not only for those that live and work and play here at Fort Jackson, but in our surrounding areas and community, as well as those that have a soldier in training here. We want to reduce that as much as we can, and this is the major approach that we have to reduce it, is to inform you, to let you know what we're doing, how we're doing, and then what we see as the road ahead and where we're headed. So with that, we're going to go through a few slides, and then we're going to leave as much time as possible, similar to last time, about 30, 40 minutes for question and answers. So the first slide that I have up is a big thank you to all of Team Jackson. And you can see from that collective picture, that is a lot of folks to thank, and it's not all inclusive of everybody up there. I will tell you, we hear the terms of those that are on the front lines, and taking nothing away from our medical personnel, our first responders that are out there. This is a non-linear fight. COVID-19 is everywhere. So everybody is on the front line, and it takes everybody to get through this together. So just for our team here and those that support us and support our mission and what we do, are really rolling up their sleeves and helping us get a lot of things done, and a lot of things put in place to include our medical personnel. And they're daily in this fight, just as you see across our nation. Our Department of Emergency Services folks, the guys and gals at the gate, I mean, they see every single person that comes to Fort Jackson. So they are truly at the tip of the spear when it comes to COVID-19. Our educators, even though school is out, our educators are doing a lot of work, and I can't thank them enough for what they do. Just so you know, here at Fort Jackson, they hand out meals 2 a day at the schools, both breakfast and lunch. So they're continuing to do their part to help us all get through COVID-19. And then, of course, our leaders, our drill sergeants, they're with your soldier day in and day out. They continue to do what they are charged to do as drill sergeants, to make that next generation of warriors for our Army. And then our training support workforce, which is all around us every single day. Our soldiers move by bus. It's those bus drivers. They have to eat. It's those dining facility workers, and they have to go shop and do other things. So it's those that are in our PXs, our commissaries, are doing tremendous work. So to all of you, thank you so much for what you do for Team Jackson and our local community. I'll go to the next slide. From day one, we talked about being transparent, and that was my commitment to Fort Jackson, my commitment to the local community, my commitment to our external family members that are out there, is to be transparent. As of a couple of days ago, we shared our last total number of positive cases that we had. Based on a Department of Defense directive, we can no longer provide those numbers. Department of Defense will now provide numbers in the aggregate for all of our armed forces. So this has nothing to do with hiding anything or hiding any information. It is all about operational security. And those that wear the cloth of our nation, whether it be Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine, or Coast Guards, that is the thing most closest to us and our leaders to protect, is our security, given our missions. And none of our missions across all of our services, none of those missions have stopped. But we can't fill that void with misinformation. So part of this town hall and all of these town halls, just like they've been in the past, is to give you the most information that we can, the most accurate information that we can, and in the most timely manner. The second point up there is protect the force. That is priority number one. We protect the force so that we protect our mission. We have put in more restrictive measures in place, and I'll talk to those a little bit later. We've changed the delivery and services to our retiree and their beneficiaries. We did not limit or cut those services off, but we did change how we're going to deliver, and that coincides with our measures to escalate based on how the conditions are changing with regard to COVID-19. As a point of note and as a point of a reminder, any soldier that is in training that tests positive for COVID-19 will be allowed to call home. In addition to that, they will be able to make periodic calls as long as they're in isolation status, just to let their family members know how they're doing and how they're progressing. We have had a decrease in training load. As you understand, across our enterprise, we're full. We use the term full, F-U-L-L, with regard to all of our battalions being full capacity when this started. But over time, the Army is going to decrease that training load for us so that we can better practice social distancing. One thing that's been said quite a bit, some pictures have been posted on social media, the Army's not getting social distancing right. We have to do our mission, and we have to do it with the best we have and in the best way that we possibly can. So things may look close, but it's because of the load. And you can only do so much with regard to space, geography, and the size of rooms that our soldiers live in, and leaders have been managing that very well. But over time, as that load decreases, we can do better at the social distancing that we're doing. We're actually doing very well at it right now, even with the increased class sizes that we have on hand today. Next slide, please. So what's changed in the last 7 days since our last town hall? As I've said before, the shelf life of information is roughly 24 hours, and that continues to be true to today. I've talked about what's changed at the Department of Defense and the Army level. The release authority for COVID-19 numbers will only come from Department of Defense from this point forward, as of yesterday. At Fort Jackson, I've declared a public health emergency, did that last week. That coincides with issuing a General Officer or General Order number 1 letter. But what does that mean in layman's term? The declaration of a public health emergency ensures that I possess the necessary authorities required to ensure compliance and to protect the force. A lot of this has to do with compliance. You see the stay-at-home orders, you see all the different things that different states are doing and local governments are doing to get folks to comply. Now I put Fort Jackson in line with our state leadership, Governor McMaster, as well as our local leadership, Mayor Benjamin. So now we're all in line with declaration or declaring a public health emergency. Now I possess all of the authorities that I need to enforce compliance, and that's what we need everybody to do as we go through this pandemic with COVID-19. We sent out a star note that is posted on social media, both on my page, the Commanding General's page, as well as Fort Jackson, with regard to what does that mean and what does that look like. So we described in detail some of the things that we've done to change how we deliver the services to the retiree population and their beneficiaries. We put a lot of effort into adjusting and moving resources to our Moncrief Medical Home, which is outside the gates of Fort Jackson, but to make sure we provide the best service to our retiree population and their beneficiaries, we put those resources there with a goal of being just as responsive or as responsive as possible with pharmacy needs, clinical visits, all those type things in that Moncrief Medical Home. We've adjusted our PX and commissary hours, as well as our purchase limitations. We've increased the purchase limit in the commissary for our active duty population to $200. The limit for all others remains the same, but that's enabled us to keep our stockage levels much better than you would see anywhere outside of our installation. That's for our personnel that live here, they work here, and those that are coming in are retirees and beneficiaries, so that we have what you need. We may not have everything, but we have a pretty good amount of stuff in our commissary given these limitations that we've put on it and we've had in place for the last several weeks. Soldiers in training will continue to train. So I wanted to provide you some pictures off to the right so you can just get a look and scan through. You might see a face that you know, hopefully you do, of how we're practicing social distance. You think about it here and what we do and what enables us to continue our mission is what we call double arm interval. So if you put your arms out That kind of gets you that double arm space that you need, and that's how we continue to train in terms of what we do. In the sleeping quarters, I know that is a concern. You have 60 roughly with a full class or a full platoon in a bay, but they sleep head to toe. We've always done that as a measure to prevent the spread of communicable diseases. But as the class loads reduce and get to 50% or below, then we could do that spacing much better. Next slide, please. Time horizons. One thing I cannot do for anybody or myself is predict the future. But one thing I will share with you and want you to know and understand is how we see the future, or how we see the road ahead and what it generally looks like for us. The dates that I put up here, none of these dates -1 are hard and fast dates. So if you follow across the top, you see where we are in time, the green arrow. The only date up there above May is 25 May. And that is the date that the current Department of Defense stop movement will expire if it's not extended. And we're going to walk you from top to bottom. Just like you've seen in the media and social media and a lot of the news, we talk about bending the curve. So the most likely for us and our nation is bend that curve. It may go up, but bend it as much as we possibly can to get that curve to go down and stay at a manageable level to where now we're not taxing out our healthcare systems, our medical treatment facilities, etc. The worst case, the most dangerous case that we cannot afford anywhere to include here at Fort Jackson is the red line that you see, is where you see that spike, whether we bend the curve or not, and it goes down, but then it reoccurs because we act too quickly to try to get ourselves back to normal. And a lot of people, and to include all of us here, are anxious, and we desire to get back to normal as fast as possible. But if we do it too quickly, then we're going to see this resurgence. And then we're going to go through this all over again, the same measures all put in place. And we've done, in my estimation, a very good job of stair-stepping our way through our measures to get us to a point to where we can bend the curve. If we have to go further, there's more measures that we have that we can put in place. And you'll see those measures there. Highlighted in the green square box is steady state. That just means normal. We started prior to March, prior to COVID-19 coming to us at steady state. We're no longer there. We went to limited access, and now we're fully into social distancing. A lot of our workforce teleworks, and we also put a lot of our workforce in what we call a ready reserve. They're home to stay away. So we're trying to follow the same principles everywhere else, stay home, and keep our workforce safe so that we at least have a bench to go to if we need it. And the last measure, if we cannot get this curve to bend fast enough and quick enough, then it's full closure. Then there's additional measures that we will put in place to help us bend that curve and then get us on a downward trajectory. The social distancing, in our estimate, will continue for a while. We have to stay apart in order to be able to come together, and that's the goal. And if we see that curve go down and stay down, and we have all the right indicators, we put the right indicators in place, then we can start to stair-step our way out of where we are currently, back to limited access, and then work our way back to steady state operations. What I've highlighted under that green box to the right, which is roughly where June, July is, the key question will come up about graduation, family days, all those type things. We will get to that point when we get to that point. When that curve is flat and it stays flat, and we know we have it contained and well under control, then we will start to work our way back into normal with the family days, the graduations, and then reviewing other restrictions along the way to get us there. If you look at the big blue arrow at the bottom left, the things that are in that big blue arrow that have started now, and those things will continue as well and coincide and run parallel to those things I've just discussed. We have resumed ship operations. So soldiers now, as of this week, have gone from basic training here at Fort Jackson to Fort Lee. And that's happened at other locations. We were the first to do it because we were the pilot organization for TRADOC in our Army to see if we could securely, in a sterile fashion, move soldiers from one location to the next and not further expand or spread COVID-19 to another location. So we've done that once successfully, and that was the proof of principle. The goal now is to continue to do this over the coming weeks. So we are a bit off of our normal plan of a graduation on Thursday and a ship operation on Friday. Now we're looking at a delay of about a week or maybe a week and a half. But we've proven the point that it can happen. We know how to operate, and we're learning how to operate in this COVID-19, in this social distance environment. If and the decision has not been fully established or made yet, we continue to receive soldiers in. They will go into an immediate quarantine. If it's a reduced capacity, then we're going to put them into an immediate 14-day quarantine so that we can continue our mission. But like I've said, hopefully this gives you an overall perspective of how we see it. None of these dates, as I mentioned, are hard and fast. Hopefully we can bend that curve earlier and sooner and get on with it with regard to stair-stepping our way back into steady state or normal operations. Because as we see it where we sit here in Fort Jackson, South Carolina, the next thing on the horizon for us is hurricane season. So we don't want to have multiple problems start to compile on each other as we continue to train, because our mission is never going to stop, and that's what we owe our nation. So we do control our destiny in a sense. We have to do the right things. We have to comply. We have to do our best and make our best efforts to bend that curve. And we also have to reduce the burden on the community, which is another thing that we don't want to do. Next slide, please. So where do we need your help? And this has been a running theme since day one. So the keys to our success is compliance. We have to comply with those things out there. And a lot of times it feels like rights are being taken away or privileges are being taken away, but everybody has to play, because we do have to stay apart to come together. We have to play by the same rules to make sure that we protect others. This is not a you game, a YOU. This is about all of us. So there's things that inconvenience us, things that we don't like that we're going to have to do to bend that curve across the board. You notice the pictures at the bottom. Our commander, General Funk, came here to visit this week, and he had to comply. And as you can see, he was happy with it. Everybody gets their temperature taken at the gate. It's a measure for us to screen. If you go into a facility at Fort Jackson, we're not trying to invade your space, but we need compliance with the measures that are in place so that we know what we know and who we have on our installation in our footprint and not cause any additional spread of COVID-19. Social distance, you've probably heard that one enough, so I won't beat that one to death, but personal integrity. We don't want anybody in a moral dilemma, and there's a lot of folks that could be put into a moral dilemma with regard to their ability to come to work or not get paid because they don't come to work, but be ashamed to admit to supervisors that they're sick or they don't feel well. You put others in jeopardy when you're in that dilemma, and we don't want anybody to be in that dilemma, so it should not be any stress, especially now, to do those things, to do the right thing, because it's not only about you, it's about everybody else. But here's the way to prolong it. So we can keep this bubble high as long as we want to, and we can prolong it if we have those that won't comply. That's why I have a public health emergency in place. There's fines associated with that. There's punitive measures associated with that for those that won't comply, those that don't get it. Fear-mongering is not going to help to fear-monger and spread rumor and spread inaccurate information. It is absolutely unnecessary at this point, but that's how we're going to prolong this if we don't get ourselves in a similar boat and row the same way with regard to putting out accurate information, timely information, and things that are helpful. And then lack of empathy. If we don't express and we don't have a lack of empathy, it's not going to be helpful. We're just going to continue to string this out because others can't see where others sit. We have a mission to do. That mission is for our nation. That is the service that we provide to our nation. So we ask for empathy in doing what we do to protect the great nation that we have. The measures that we have to put in place, understand what we're trying to do, protect our force, our total and our entire workforce, so that we can continue our mission. And our mission is for our nation. And you can see, again, at the bottom in the center photo, where General Funk visited our isolation and quarantine facilities. Those soldiers that are there, whether they arrived recently or they've been in training for a while, they're well taken care of, they have their uniforms, they will remain in the physical fitness uniform, they're fed, they get their access to different things to keep them engaged both mentally and physically. And then you can see to the right part of the ship operations that we did. So we're working our way through, but it takes the keys to success and everybody doing that for us to get our way back to steady state or normal. Next. And lastly, before I go around to the team to give you a quick update and we get to question and answers, this is a look at our workforce. And our workforce is not at home. The pictures look nice and happy and they're good, but part of my concern every day is about that workforce that's not here. But that's who we're trying to preserve. Those are the faces we're trying to preserve in our workforce so that we can do our mission. Yes, they're at home, but they're working. They're working, they're looking deep. They're helping us think about those problems and things that we can't see. If you look around the photo at the bottom in our commissary, things that are going up, not only to protect them, but to protect the customers that come there. They have screens now, sneeze or cough screens, as they call it. But doing those things so that they can provide the service that they need to, because they know their job and what they do is vital to all of us. And then in the top right, you see folks at our commissary. Those workers, they come in day to day, doing their job, doing what they need to do in their part so that we all can do our mission, our families can live as normal life as they possibly can under these conditions, but to make sure it's safe for them. Next slide. And just more pictures that I wanted to share. Again, you see the compliance for those that come through the gate. If you haven't come through the gates lately, then you're going to see it with regard to having the temp checks. The photo in the center is one of our great drill sergeants. And even in this COVID-19 environment, drill sergeants will do what they're trained to do. And there's a lot of things that happen day to day, but this particular drill sergeant who is standing with Drill Funk performed life-saving measures on a trainee that was having issues. And when you're talking about resuscitating and doing those type things, some folks are fearful of touching others, but not our drill sergeants. They know what their job is. They're not fearful to do their job, and they want to continue to train as well, but they also understand that they're in harm's way, but they have faith and trust in all of our leadership that we're putting the right measures in place to make sure that they're taken care of and we don't further put their families in harm's way. And at the bottom right, we had a graduation yesterday, 334 Infantry, Rock Force. And I was there, and we still do the things that we know are part of some level of normalcy under this current environment. So we adapt and we overcome. But handing out those coins to those soldiers that were identified as soldiers of the cycle, soldier leader of the cycle, and the drill sergeant of the cycle, is critically important that we continue to do those things, because your soldier is here training. They're learning how to be adaptive. We see resiliency grow every single day. And so to go out and give them a coin for excellence not only means did they meet the standard, they exceeded the standard every single day. And lastly, in the top right is a lady named Miss Gladys. She's worked in our reception area for over 25 years. She sees every single soldier that comes to Fort Jackson and greets them personally. And she stands there at that desk just like that to meet your soldier. Beside her is her battalion commander, and she does the same. So our goal is to take care of our nation's most precious resource. We don't take that lightly, we take that very seriously. So I appreciate you being informed. Stand up on all of our social media platforms. If you don't know about them, we have Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. We also have our command channel for those that are here locally, 1304. So keep yourself informed. Go to our app. If you don't have our app, even if you're not here, you can go to the App Store and download that app and get all the latest updates in real time. Because part of my responsibility and commitment to you is to keep you informed. So with that, we'll go around. We'll start with our MEDAC Commander, Colonel Koenig, for any updates on the medical side.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. So I want to start by doubling down on a couple things before I get to changes in medical services. So the General Beagle has spoken a lot about the social distancing piece of it. And what I challenge you to do is get a tape measure and measure out 6 feet and see how far that actually is. Because that's actually significantly farther than most people understand and or realize. And I'm also a big fan of the why. And so the why is COVID-19 is primarily spread through aerosol. That means droplets in the air. So talking, singing, sneezing, etc. And so that is the reason for the 6 feet. And so 6 feet has been what has been determined that during normal coughing, it keeps you relatively safe. And so the next thing I wanted to talk about real quickly, because I get a lot of questions about testing. And so 2 things I want to highlight about testing. First of all, the medical community, not just Fort Jackson, but the medical community cannot test everyone. And I want to highlight that a positive test tells us something, but a negative test has a lot more limit to what it tells us. All that tells us is that you are not positive or you did not have COVID at that exact moment in time that we tested you, and or your viral load wasn't high enough yet for us to detect. And so while people ask for testing, well, we'll test where appropriate, I want people to keep in mind what testing does tell us and what testing doesn't tell us. What will help us even more is the quarantine piece of it, especially for those that are exposed, because you can fool the negative, but you can't fool the quarantine. And so then the final thing that I wanted to hit on a little bit, because General Beagle talked a lot about being open and transparent. So while we can't speak numbers because of OPSEC and because of the DoD directive, what we can tell you is we've seen it in all segments of our population. You know, that includes retirees, family members, spouses, people who work on the installation, and it's roughly proportional to what we're seeing in the outside county and outside community. And so what we see on Fort Jackson is about the same. So when it comes to changes in services that I want to highlight, so as General Beagle indicated, we have not changed the services we offer for the most part. What we've done is we've changed how we offer them. And so we didn't wait until the 6th to move our enrolled retirees out to the medical home platform. That has already been done. That started this week, and every report that I get is that it's going extremely well out in that platform. And so that's that facility out on Pinnacle Point Drive north of the city. And so that's where we're doing all the enrolled retiree care outside of those that live on the installation. Pharmacy is a little bit different. We are doing pharmacy services for those that are enrolled out at Pinnacle Point Drive, just like we're doing their care. But for those who are not enrolled, we will continue to do that out of our main pharmacy facility on Tuesdays and Fridays. Same thing for those who live on the installation. Retirees who live on the installation will continue to get their care on the installation. So will family members and active duty. You'll see a huge shift to virtual platforms. That might mean telephone-based, or it might mean video-based, and that video-based could be through a series of different apps. My staff will even walk you through how you download those apps on your smartphone if you have one and you want to do that route. But again, that's all part of that social distancing. You're safest when you stay in your home, so we'd love to see you stay in your home. So speaking of the distancing piece, when you do receive pharmacy services, you'll notice that it's a little bit different now. You will come, especially at the main facility, but actually at both facilities. You will come to the facility, you will check in, and then we'll ask you to go back out and wait in your car. And there's a parking space or lot for you to wait, and my staff will actually deliver your meds to your window or to your car in order to, again, enable that social distancing that we wouldn't be able to do if everyone came into our building and into that rather cramped pharmacy space. Refills will continue to be done out of the refill pharmacy for those who are not enrolled, and for those who live on the installation. For those that are receiving their care at Moncrief Medical Home, we will do refills out at Moncrief Medical Home also. And then finally, you will see a couple small changes in the specialty care that we can offer. But again, we will make sure that we are taking care of you. For those that don't have regular installation access, meaning 7 days a week, we will take care of that on Tuesday and Friday with the help of our community partners who also can offer some of those services. So real quick recap, and at the end I will gladly answer any further questions that you have. So I'm going to turn it over now to Colonel Hankins, our garrison commander.
Thanks, Chad. Good afternoon. First and foremost, I just want to thank you again for your patience, your understanding, and your cooperation as we continue to remain focused on community protection to ensure everyone's health and safety. As you already know, our primary means is our social distancing and our sanitization practices. So we ask that each and one of you continue to help us with that effort. While we continue informing everyone, both internal and external, to Fort Jackson of a rapidly changing environment, we ask that each of you continue to view the social media platforms, that Fort Jackson app, the command channel, and the Leader newspaper that General Beagle spoke of, so that you can remain informed of the frequently changes that are occurring on Fort Jackson. With regards to our upcoming changes, to help slow the spread, again, beginning 6 April, we're implementing additional temporary measures to disperse vulnerable populations while preserving essential services. These changes do not deny essential services, but they do change how, when, and where those services are being delivered to retirees and their beneficiaries. The changes include modifications to our installation access, our medical services that Chad spoke of, the commissary, and the identification card facility. With regards to the installation access, our Department of Emergency Services will begin on 6 April, only enabling mission essential, key personnel, and on-post residents to have access to the installation. This means that retirees and their beneficiaries will have access to services on the installation on Tuesdays and Fridays only, while continuing to receive that medical care every duty day at the Fort Jackson Medical Home. An exception includes the ID card facility, which will remain open daily by appointment only. Walk-in appointments will continue to be accepted, and we will support that effort as the Department of Human Resources Services pulls daily rosters and provides that to our access control point to inform them of the retirees that have those appointments so that they can continue to come onto the installation. For those individuals that may have lost their ID card or that ID card may have expired and they do not have an appointment, our security guards will assess an alternate form of identification and validate the expiration date on those cards and continue to allow you to come onto the installation to have walk-in appointments. For our other services effective 6 April, our retirees and beneficiaries will be allowed to use the commissary, the exchange, and the other open venues that will remain available on the installation. For the commissary, this means that our 65 and older retirees and their beneficiaries, as well as those that have medical, immunocompromised immune systems, will continue to have priority shopping hours from 7:30 to 9 o'clock a.m. on Tuesdays and Fridays to further reduce that risk. Retirees and their beneficiaries living on post will continue to have that access on a daily basis. Also, our active duty beneficiaries who are immunocompromised will continue having priority shopping hours, the first open hour of every day at the commissary. All other active duty service members and their beneficiaries will have daily access during normal operating hours. Again, please see the Fort Jackson app and the COVID-19 website for more details on those specific hours and services. Moving to our other updates, our Dodea schools will remain closed until further notice. However, Dodea continues to publish weekly updates to all attending families as they continue to educate our children during distance learning, while also continuing to provide those breakfast and lunch meals on a daily basis for pickup. For our MWR and our child youth services and those recreational facilities and programs, they will continue to remain closed for the foreseeable future. However, the NCO Club is offering takeout food orders. For on-post housing, we continue responding to emergency and urgent work orders. Our Government Housing Office continues pushing information to all residents, which includes our retirees and our command-sponsored Waterfall residents. We have placed the dog park and the playground equipment off limits until further notice. Social gatherings, for example, those block parties, are also not allowed, and we will be leveraging our community mayors and our other senior non-commissioned officer leaders in each of those neighborhoods to continue to view our communities to ensure that we are enforcing and adhering to those standards in order to prevent the spread. We appreciate each of your cooperation to allow us to continue to have the type of environment that we need in our neighborhoods and in our homes to protect those families and their children. Last but not least, our APHIS Exchange partners have taken prudent measures to sanitize facilities and equipment to ensure social distancing in each of our venues by placing seating areas off limits, preventing social spread at each register by installing plexiglass barriers, and continuing those detailed sanitization procedures of all of the door facings, the shopping carts, and other equipment that are being used by our patrons. Again, we thank you for your understanding, patience, and cooperation as we continue to adapt and work together to keep everyone as safe as possible. I'll be followed by Colonel Eric Flesch.
So first of all, I'd like to say I'm happy to be part of today's discussion in Town Hall representing the 165th Infantry and our battle buddies over in the 193rd Infantry. I'd like to emphasize to everyone, just like the rest of DOD, we have to stay on mission. So we will continue to train and take all force protection measures to do so. As we do our portion of the DOD mission in the Army's fight, some of you might have seen over the last 48 hours, DOD still stays on point to defeat our enemies and defend our nation. And just like the Joint Chairman said yesterday evening, there are many enemies out there, to include our terrorists and extremists, this COVID virus, and newly formed like the cartels and other ones, and anything else that wants to take advantage of this current situation we're in. So we'll stay on point and stay on mission while protecting the force. So what have we done? Because as General Beagle said, it's not norm. We're not working under normal conditions. Are we still receiving new trainees? Absolutely. That's part of our mission. Are we still pushing individuals out to AIT? Yes, we are, but not under normal conditions. So we continue to train by spreading out through the social distancing. We're starting to receive smaller quantities of soldiers so we can spread out in the bays. We are changing how we train, how we move, how we sleep, how we eat. All those things are taken into consideration to keep this contained or closed group that we have here training free of the virus and keep it from spreading. That includes, which some of you know, and you'll see, those who are put into our reserve or activated periodically to come in and replace those so we can put others aside because of something that has changed in their own individual situation or their family situation. But we are, through reduced force and reduced mission, adjusting things to protect the force and keep up the fight. So happy to take any questions on how we're doing that and how we'll continue to adjust to keep our portion of the Army mission going. Sir.
Thanks, sir. Okay, so with that, we've left roughly 30 minutes or so to answer all your questions. I wouldn't say all, but again, if we don't get to them today, continue to have your questions come in. We've got a team that will continue to give answers as they come up, even after we go offline. So keep your questions coming in as you view this, as you go back, rewind it. I ask that you do that as well. Go back to certain portions of this so you can see if you didn't hear it or you missed it. Just go back and rewind so you can kind of see or hear for yourself what you may have missed. But keep your questions coming in. We appreciate your questions. We appreciate a lot of the thoughts and thanks that come in as well that we get to see and review. So we appreciate those of you that understand, that are empathetic to the position that we're in and understanding what we're trying to do and what we have to do for your soldier and our nation. So first question, please.
The first question coming from the Facebook comments is concerning the number of soldiers that are sleeping in spaces that aren't within 6 feet. That's the concern.
Okay. Part of that I addressed earlier. So again, our bay, sleeping bays, 4A platoon is 60 personnel in a bay. They're bunk beds, one top, one bottom. When the soldiers sleep, it's head to foot. So they're pointed different ways, and that's all the way down throughout the entire bay. There is space between those, so unless you've been inside a bay, you will note that there's roughly 6 feet in between those bunks, as well as wall lockers to help the spacing there. As we reduce the training load, which again, when COVID happened, we don't dictate when it happens or when it happened, that our training load was full. And so we can't do anything more about what we don't have, and we're not going to be concerned or wring our hands about what we don't have. But all that to say, the Army has recognized that and reduced our training load to 50%. So we've seen that over the last week. We'll see that over the coming weeks. So as the classes that do come in, they're half of what we typically have. So now a bay that sleeps 60 will only sleep 30, which gives even more space for the separation in the sleeping quarters. But thanks and great question.
The next question is concerning who is providing guidance to the civilian organizations on post. It seems as if they are making their own rules versus what is being put out by the Department of the Army. The question is more so referencing civilians that are being told to use annual leave for their telework if they're not teleworking.
Okay, the question is kind of confusing. I would say if you see that, then what you're seeing really is lack of compliance. And I know we put a lot of effort into getting everyone, every part of our workforce to comply. That goes in line with the public health emergency. It goes in line with the General Order number 1. So where we see it, things are now or will be punitive that we can put against that. There's fines that we can levy on personnel that are not compliant and doing the right things. But I'll let Colonel Hankins cover what we've done with regard to the workforce, essentially across the board, and their work, and then the type of leaves that we have that are available to our workforce.
Sir, thank you very much. First and foremost, the Department of the Army has the CHARA office, which provides policy on all of our workforce policies, and our local CPAC office, which is responsible for all of our civilian personnel manning and support, also helps clarify those policies for implementation here on Fort Jackson. Some of the forms of administrative leave that we use are weather and administrative leave, and that's a form of leave that is being currently offered to civilians in order to ensure that they are able to be away from work if they're not eligible to fulfill their duties via a telework policy. That allows them to be at home. For instance, our non-appropriated funds personnel that work in our morale and welfare recreation areas are currently at home under these leaves, and they are continuing to receive their pay. So the Army has taken great measures to ensure that we're able to take care of our workforce. For those that may not necessarily have annual leave, and also those that do, they have provided alternate measures to ensure that each of our workforce members are being appropriately covered. Yes, sir.
Next question from Facebook. What measures will be taken to follow social distancing in departments at Moncrief that are not designated to accommodate the 6-foot requirement?
So the question was about Moncrief and how we will manage social distancing. So as General Beagle Ray alluded to, not every situation is set up ideally for social distancing. We do the best we can within the platforms we have. We've also started to implement the use of masks in places where we cannot appropriately social distance. It will not be perfect. There's different venues, there's different avenues, but perfect example, we now even have signs up at our elevator saying either 1 or 2 people on the elevator at a time, depending upon which elevator it is and how large it is. In the different departments, we try to control, and especially with the waiting rooms, we try to control how many people come in at a time. In some waiting rooms, or a lot of the waiting rooms, we have marked off certain seats to try to ensure that people sit a distance apart. And then when it comes to providers and their interactions with the patients, we've been encouraging our providers to use masks, especially when the interaction with the patient does not allow for the 6-foot distancing. Hopefully that answered your question.
Next question. Why are gate guards, soldiers, who are taking the temperatures of those coming on post not wearing PPE, face mask, or gloves?
So the question regarding why are the soldiers or the gate guards not wearing PPE? They have PPE. I've checked that personally, made sure that was in place personally, but it is their decision, their comfort level to put on a mask. They all wear gloves when you come through the gate, especially our Department of the Army security guards, because we are no longer taking, or they're not touching the ID cards themselves. You present your card, but they're not going to take it. They don't take your card. So again, that's at their discretion, at their level. It's empowering down at a lowest possible level. If they're not touching the ID card, then it's up to them whether or not they want to wear a glove or not, because they're not touching it. And with the PPE that they have, I went into a different gate the other day. One guard has a mask on, the other does not. But they know it's at their discretion, their own personal comfort level, whether or not they want to leverage the PPE that we have provided to them. Great question.
When coming through the gate, will the gate guard check each person's temperature in the vehicle or just the driver?
The short answer, who will the gate guard check when they come through the gate for temperature? Everyone in the vehicle. Hope that answers it.
Next question. Why are drill sergeants being extended 6 months?
Okay. Part of why drill sergeants are being extended for 6 months, and that decision has not been made. So there's a rumor out there. There is a request, which is the fact, to extend involuntarily drill sergeants for 6 months, from March to September. Along with that request is additional pay if they are involuntarily extended, but I won't go into the amounts or what types, but it will all come together. And the reason why that is because the Drill Sergeant Academy has had to stop classes. So if we don't have any additional classes coming in for drill sergeants, given the stop move and everything else that is in place with regard to COVID-19, then the Drill Sergeant Academy can't produce drill sergeants. So at the end of it, we'll be short over 600 plus drill sergeants, and you can't make that up overnight. So now we'll have to wait overtime to restart the drill sergeant classes to produce drill sergeants. And that 6 months is about what the Army estimates we would need to then get balanced with and making up that delta of drill sergeants that have not been coming through the training pipeline to come out the other end to go to training units, which is the requirement to keep drill sergeants in place for up to 6 months. That's a great question. Hopefully you understand how that works.
Since soldiers were successfully shipped from Fort Jackson to Fort Lee on sterile transportation, and there is a 1 to 1.5 week delay in shipping to AIT, is it reasonable to assume we can extend our mailing to our soldiers at Fort Jackson by 1 week?
I'll let Colonel Flesh answer that one, because we did something very unique, and we shifted those soldiers that were remaining to a different battalion to create capacity here. And that's one of our challenges. So Colonel Flesh can tell you how that's going to work.
Yes, sir. So those Those of you who have heard from your soldiers, and you should, especially those who have graduated, soldiers, they do have access to their cell phones at different times, should have reached out to you, and you should know if they've shipped on to AIT, and we've only had that one pilot. Of course, the whole Army is working on shipping more out to their AITs. Those that are delayed are all being consolidated into 3rd Battalion, 34th Infantry. And we selected them for this special mission because they had a similar mission while we all took holiday or victory block leave. So they've have some experience in a similar mission of assembling soldiers and holding on to them as they're delayed or in transit. So 334 now will take all graduates on that cannot ship to their AIT. They will continue to receive mail. If you sent something based on their old address, that will be forwarded here on Fort Jackson. Those who have transitioned to 334 can give you their new address, and that will be their address where they'll stay and continue to train and prep for their advanced individual training before the Army works out the ship plan and we get them moving on to their next phase of training. Hopefully that answers the question. If not, please go to any of the social media. Facebook 334 is the unit that'll be handling that, or expect to ask that question when you get their next phone call from your soldier.
And to go along with that, if anybody has the question about phones, and so what I would tell you, everything Colonel Flesh told you is absolutely correct. But if you're only anticipating, and it's probably good to make an assumption about a week and a half, it all depends on where you're mailing your letters and cards from. It may take a week and a half for it to get here. They will have access to their phone because they are now graduates. They are soldiers, no longer trainees, but that does not mean they're going to have their phones with them for 24/7. Because soldiers are people like we're all people. Under the uniform is a person. And in some cases, everybody may not do the right thing with regard to their phone and then having them in the sleeping areas and those type. And we don't want to have any of those issues. We're still trying to get what they've learned here in basic training to stick, which is discipline, which is dignity and respect for others. And so it's not a right that they have their phone. It is a privilege, and that remains the same even as a graduate of basic training. So they will have their phones. They will have more privileges and extended times with their phone, but they're not going to have them 24/7. So your best method would be to get that contact or make that contact via phone and text messages. Great question. Next.
What's the plan for AIT soldiers who've graduated AIT from Fort Jackson? The plan is for his movement forward.
So the movement for the AIT soldiers, so the pilot that we did was to prove the principle for both basic and AIT. AIT in roughly the next week or so, I don't have an exact date, but as all that gets planned and lined up to go from AIT to their next duty location is the plan. And they'll do it the same way with regard to ground travel now has been proven. Now we have to look at proving air travel, and how do we do that in that same fashion, that same sterile, secure fashion to all these distant locations that these soldiers have to go to. And if part of your question is, can you come and pick them up? The answer is no. A great question.
Sir, I think that I'm out of questions.
That has got to be hard to believe. So we've got 10 minutes left. If you have another question that's burning, and I ask you to send those questions because a lot of people want similar answers. So please, if you have another question, we'll remain here for a few more minutes to take your questions. But all the questions have been great, and we certainly appreciate you asking the questions that you asked, just so you're informed and that you know.
I do have another question now.
Awesome.
Is there a chance at graduation delays?
Only for the foreseeable future. The only thing that would delay a graduation would be weather. And then that, again, if that comes up, it may delay the actual graduation itself. The one thing that we have not quite worked our way through is how to do a graduation with social distance and indoor, because that's the only option that we have. I would prefer not to do an indoor graduation because we could get the distance, but it's a lot of people indoors and talking to trainees at that point in time. So we may have to look at other options, and we're exploring those as well. But the only thing that would delay it would be a weather delay if you're talking the actual ceremony itself that you would not see live stream. And I hope that answers it. And Eric?
If I could, because I do know there's some questions that have come in through different social media asking about soldiers and delays and graduations beyond just basic training. So as the commanding general said, with our basic training graduation week in week 10 still remains the same. If it is weather or something like that, we'll publish the time frame that we will live stream that graduation if there's an adjustment in that week, but it should still take place in week 10. For those that are moving on to their advanced individual training, because that is going to be based on location, the transportation to the location, and the different MOSs, so basically their job or their career field, and how the Army moves them into, and the needs of the Army into their first unit of assignment. So if you're reaching out to your soldier in training, their end state or their final graduation date and movement is definitely being adjusted. And that is going to depend on, you need to be in contact with them of where they're going for that advanced individual training. And AITs right now are adjusting their graduations, or what will be that final graduation before their first unit of assignment. So at Fort Jackson basic training should be live streamed in week 10, but each individual based on career field will have adjustments to their dates as they move on in training in their first unit of assignment. And hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, and I think another part of that question that you may have been getting after as well, and some of the other families may have the same question or concern. So now that I think about when you say delay, we're thinking here at the table the physical delay of the graduation ceremony itself. If there is a case where a trainee goes into quarantine or isolation in that 14 days, and they're going to say the duration of the 14 days, what impact will that have on their graduation with the battalion that they started with? Well, it all depends, but in most cases, now they've missed 2 weeks of training that we have to make up. So most cases, that trainee will go to a different battalion that is more than likely next in line or the battalion before that, so their graduation will be potentially delayed by 2 weeks. So we just shift those that have been in quarantine. They won't graduate with their original battalion, but we'll set them back to the point in time that they came out of training with a different battalion, and then they graduate 1 to 2 weeks later.
Okay, next question. Could you please address who is allowed to use the commissary and when, as far as dependents and retirees in active duty?
Okay.
Yes, sir. The question was, who would be allowed to use the commissary when, in terms of retirees, their dependents, and active duty? So for 65 and older retirees and their beneficiaries, as well as those who are medically immunocompromised, they'll continue to have priority shopping hours from 07:30 to 9 o'clock on Tuesdays and Fridays to further reduce that risk. The retirees and their beneficiaries who are living on post, those retirees and the beneficiaries who are living on post will continue to have access to the commissary every day during normal duty operating hours. For active duty beneficiaries who are immunocompromised, they will continue to have those priority shopping hours on Tuesday and Thursday with the retirees, and they will also have the first open hour of every day that the commissary is open for their priority shopping as well. All other active duty and their families and beneficiaries will have access to the commissary, whether they live on post or off post, every day of the week during those normal operating hours. Thank you.
Next question. Is it possible to start virtual AIT?
For that question, is it possible to start virtual AIT? There's a lot of virtual things that are going on right now, both with AIT and some of the other courses here at Fort Jackson. They're not completely implemented yet because we've been used to what we have in the past is the face-to-face, the classes, all those type things. So our 369 AG battalion here, which is AIT, they're working their way into virtual aspects of their AIT, but typically that's still going to be physical, but how they deliver will change. Some of the other courses here, even the Drill Sergeant Academy, or to include the Drill Sergeant Academy, or looking at virtual options for the first couple of weeks of the Drill Sergeant Academy, and then they physically still have to come here to complete the rest. But that's a great question, and those things are happening, but in different fashion based on the courses. I do want to loop back to the question about the commissary hours and those type things. And we weren't able, or I wasn't able to explain it very well in the letter, but explain to our retiree population the why behind why did we select Tuesday and Friday. The thing that causes me most concern is we're dealing with two vulnerable populations, those in that retiree population and their beneficiaries and the training population. And what we don't want to have happen is cross-pollination between those two populations, or those two populations to meet for an extended amount of time. Day to day, that's not going to happen. especially not in the commissary. But it can happen in the PX. So as our graduates, soldiers graduate here, they're still allowed to have their own post pass. They can go to places like the PX and other things that we have on the installation. Day to day, they're going to the same Moncrief clinic as well. In a lot of cases, they're not commingling, but they're there. They're in the same spaces or close proximity in some cases. So Tuesdays and Fridays for us gets us as much separation as we possibly can, because we know Wednesdays and Thursdays is when all the trainees, just like on a day like today, they're out on the installation. And retirees, they love soldiers. So again, it's the right thing to do, to want to thank a soldier, want to see them, shake their hand and all those type things. But under these conditions, we had to create that separation. So it's not about denying any type of service. It's about taking care of and protecting what I consider two vulnerable populations. Next question.
At what point will we consider shutting down training?
The question was, at what point will we consider shutting down training? I will tell you that is an unknown. At the highest levels, all of our leadership from Secretary of Defense down has essentially stated that we will all continue to do our mission. We are trained to deal with multiple threats. This is a threat that we've never seen, but the expectation of our nation is to continue to deal with all threats. That's why we do what we do. That's why we took the oath that we did, to protect our nation against all enemies, foreign or domestic. This is one that is all of everything. COVID does not have a passport or a driver's license, but it's everywhere. COVID does not have a DOD ID card or a uniform, but it's here, and we have to deal with it. And we have to learn how to train and do our mission for our nation in this COVID-19 environment and in this social distance environment. But great question.
I have no further questions, sir.
Okay. So no further questions coming in. If that question or that epiphany hits you at a later moment, please send it in. Somebody on our team, some other individual out there may answer it. And I've seen a lot of other individuals that understand or have a better perspective of how things work have been really helping to answer those questions. And I appreciate you more than you know for helping us inform and helping us get out accurate information and timely information. So everything that you all are doing to help us and to help us help our community is greatly appreciated. And I do not appreciate more your understanding, your empathy, your ability to want to comply and be in compliance. And also, if you see something, say something or do something if it's not right with regard to what you're hearing from us and what you know to be right with regard to everybody complying. And as long as we stay apart, it will allow us to come together at some point in time and get through this COVID-19. But join us again next week, same time, same location, on your screen, wherever you may be, at 15:30, and for civilians, 3:30. We'll inform you more of what we know and the rapid pace of information change here. We want to keep you as up to speed and close to speed as possible. So thank you, and victory does starts here.